Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you to the next session. My name's Abby Barrow. I'm the director of the Mass Tech Transfer Center. We're actually a state-funded group that works with all the universities, research institutes, and research hospitals in the state of Massachusetts. Combined, they have a rather large budget. I just track their research budgets, and from a federal perspective, the federal government sends up just over $6.5 billion a year to be spent in those institutes to undertake basic research in all areas. Obviously, the institutes have many roles and many interaction points with industry and with others, so bottom line, they are the training place for the next generation of workforce. That $6.5 billion that comes up from the federal government, as well as an additional almost $1 billion in industry funding, goes into basic research, investigating fundamental new discoveries. The institutes spend a lot of time commercializing new technologies, either through working with existing companies or in creating new companies. The institutions combined in the state create about 70 new companies a year. They are, of course, with those budgets, very big consumers of IT products. They have students, they have staff, everybody else who's worried about whether they should be using the cloud, how they're going to have security, and especially if they're running hospitals, either with the university or the research hospitals here, they have HealthIT budgets. And then finally, of course, they're a development partner with many industries and a source of equipment and expertise in the development of new products. So those are some of the areas that we're going to explore today with our panel. So I'm just going to go down Vera Tice from WPI, John Goodhue from the Mass Green High Performance Computing Center, and then Gary Burnett from Bathwick. So I've asked them all to make sort of an opening statement on what they do, what types of healthcare IT technology they're interested in, how they interact between universities and industry, and then if they can give us an example of a perfect case of a project between industry and academia. So let's start with Vera.
Good afternoon. Before I get started, I just wanted to get a sense of the mix of people in the room in terms of where you're from. So how many of you are with technology companies? Okay, how about healthcare provider organizations? Okay, insurers? Government organizations? And other academic organizations? Okay, great. All right, I just wanted to open with a few slides on the Healthcare Delivery Institute at WPI. We are relatively new. We were just established at the end of last year, but we're not new in the sense of the type of work that we do. We have our roots in research that started at WPI in the healthcare-related area about 3 years ago, focused in the e-health and digital health area. And over the last few years, our research has expanded, and so the WPI has basically given us support to take the research that we've been doing and move it forward in terms of an institute that is focused on research, applied research, thought leadership, and education. So before I answer the specific questions that Abby asked, I just wanted to go quickly through who we are so that you know what we're about. So our mission is to partner with technology companies, healthcare providers, and insurers to help create the healthcare delivery system of the future. Our vision, as many people have spoken to today, is an integrated system across the continuum of care to wherever the patient may be, from the hospital and beyond to clinics, homes, and on the go as we're becoming more of a mobile society, with the goal to improve patient care, patient engagement, and reduce costs. WPI is doing this, as I said, through applied research, thought leadership, and education, which I'll touch on in a minute. And WPI's specific value that we bring to this area is our project-based research and our expertise in applying systems engineering and technology and process innovation. So our three areas of focus, as I said, were applied research projects. So we've been for the last few years partnering with several clinical partners that are listed there in various research projects, a lot of it funded through the National Science Foundation and the Veterans Administration. And so we are going from a grant-funded research organization into forming new partnerships with the different players that I mentioned. We are engaged in thought leadership with these different organizations, and we're focused in two main areas right now. We have an annual symposium. We just had it last week, where we had over 140 people, again, representing technology companies, healthcare providers, insurers, and government and other academic organizations. And we are in the planning stages of hosting a healthcare summit in the fall that is focused on bringing players together from healthcare policy and government to see what we're doing. And then we offer an educational component, two parts to that. One is through graduate degree programs, both at the master's and PhD level. We have a couple courses, a couple of programs we have in place, and we're continuing to define and expand that, and also in some of the corporate and professional education programs. In terms of our programs, our research programs, we have 4 core programs right now with 2 that we are emerging and starting to define now. The first is in the whole mobile and digital health or wireless health space, so developing mobile and wireless clinical solutions to bring care to the patient. So some of it's in the area of using mobile devices, crossing the line into medical devices and imaging to improve patient engagement, a lot of it in the chronic disease management area. Analyzing the impact of using healthcare information technology into the healthcare delivery process and ways that we can improve that. Modeling and redesigning the way healthcare is delivered, so as we're continuing to move outside the walls of physical locations and integrating in mobile healthcare delivery, how do we need to redesign some of the way we're doing healthcare delivery now so that fits in. The whole area of big data and mining digital data and analyzing that clinical and operational data to improve care and reduce costs. And then our 2 emerging areas of applying robotics and gaming to healthcare. Some of you may be familiar that WPI has strong programs in the robotics area and interactive media and gaming, and so we're starting to tie that into solutions for healthcare.
Thanks very much, Vera. John, do you want to tell us about the computing center?
Sure. I'm John Goodhue. Is this on? I'm the executive director of the Massachusetts Green High Performance Computing Center, which is a university industry government partnership to build a data center that's dedicated to housing research computing resources for all the universities. So I could have joined the cloud panel instead of this one and talked about the benefits of a community cloud, which is somewhere in between public and private. But I'll focus remarks today more on the partnership and the why. So that the interest of the Commonwealth and the industrial sponsors in this case really is fairly abstract. It's promoting the idea of cooperation among the universities to solve common problems, as well as just recognizing the importance of research computing infrastructure in the universities. There's a longer story to that, but there was interest and a partnership. Around the center, a fairly big flock of cooperative research programs have kind of grown up, and I thought it would be of some interest to maybe outline some of the challenges that I've seen around those programs, particularly the ones that are interested in university, as well as what seems to work. So if I was going to take just 2 challenges, one of them has to do with time frame. Right? MIT and Harvard have 50-year plans. In my years in high-tech companies, anything beyond 2 years was out of the question, and in many companies today, next week is about the horizon that you need to work on to survive. So matching those 2 senses of time frames can be difficult and challenging, but can work. Also, the currency in academic research is ideas. The currency in business is money. So finding a way to marry those 2 in a way that's productive can either lead to very creative partnerships or extreme difficulty, depending on how you approach it. Things that seem to work, I think collaboration is good, but collaboration is terrible if you don't have clear common interests. And time frame comes into this. There are areas in high tech, for example, where the problems that academic research is interested in and capable of solving are just too far out in time to be sufficiently relevant to business. And as opposed to trying to force fit, the answer there is probably just to say, we'll come back in a while. When I was working on the ARPANET in the 80s, right, the precursor to the internet, it was not commercially relevant, nor should it have been. In the 90s, that was a very different proposition. Another one that I think is important, so there is a marriage when you get something that's open-ended enough to be of interest and relevant for a research project, as well as near-term enough for business. Those also tend to be fairly scary areas. Security in the cloud, for example. We'd all like to have the research project that solves that problem once and for all. Probably doesn't exist right now. Another key ingredient, certainly in our context, is enough passionate people wanting to make the idea happen. The computer center that I'm working on today simply would not have happened if Jack Wilson, the president of UMass at the time, and Susan Hockfield, the president of MIT, had not sat down and decided, by God, we're going to make this happen. And we're going to draw in the other 5 preeminent universities research universities in the Commonwealth, and later on we'll also draw in folks like WPI and others to make this happen. Then the last one that I'll mention, which is important but not very tangible, is trust. Research has a lot to do with, well, you put some money in here, and at some point, some good ideas might come out, some good grad students might come out, or maybe not. And I think as an industrial sponsor, it's important to have a sense for that sense of risk and serendipity. If you're not, if that's not your cup of tea, probably not worth going after these kinds of collaborations. So just a few thoughts.
Okay, Gary.
And a fantastic setup for me. Thank you very much. One of the things I've liked about all of the panels is every panelist has a subtly different, but albeit complementary perspective. So I'm going to talk briefly about a program that we run that we call Connected World, which is about identifying, quotes, a problem, and then finding some academics and some business people and getting them into a room with a view to solving the problem. And of course, it's not always that easy. And so as part of the Connected World program, we essentially have a framework which is designed to help people negotiate the form that collaboration is going to take, because the issues you just described are really very real. Academics, bless them, have a different time scale for a lot of this stuff. You know, I know academics who've managed to eke their PhD out to 8 or 9 years, you know, and provided they can still get funding, you know, they would probably make it last another 8 or 9 years. Whereas if I'm going to engage them with commercial interests, those guys are going to want results much, much more quickly than that. There's also the question of trust, which you raised. Academics are very squirrely about how and when their stuff gets published. And you have some commercial entities who will want to publish very soon, or alternatively at the other end of the spectrum would never want you to publish, and to keep it completely secret. The other thing that we spend a lot of time working on is the intellectual property outcome. So, you know, we now have a sort of, it's like a wizard you go through, and both parties have to go through it, and then we try and kind of come up with the optimal intellectual property model that's going to suit both parties. So it ranges from completely open source and published and public, right to we all agree to make a commitment to keep this secret for a period of time. And those are all issues that will vary project by project. and will vary university by university and commercial organisation by commercial organisation. But there are a couple of areas where recently it's certainly starting to work out. So we're running a couple of projects. One is around creating what we're calling the open knowledge base, which is a knowledge base of geographical specific data related to developing countries. And that's data sets coming from a host of sources, from the United Nations. So we have data on, how many tractors there are in Afghanistan. It's 23 this year, just so you know. But we also get data from commercial entities. So the cell phone companies give us data about the location of their cell masts. And that's actually quite proprietary data, so we have to be relatively sensitive with that. But we've developed a framework which allows us to manage all of those different things, not perfectly by any means, but as sensitively and with as little compromise required on the part of all of the other parties. The other thing that we do, which I think is germane, is, with no disrespect to American or European research institutions, we're doing a lot of work now on assessing particularly sub-Saharan African universities for their potential as potential points of partnership for large commercial organizations. So we're looking at individual institutions and trying to sort of grade them in terms of partnerability, and we grade them on a whole range of things, including political stability and so on and so forth, which is used by large commercial organizations to determine the risk and the potential reward of partnering with those institutions.
Great, thanks. So, just as a first question, what do you see as the biggest frustrations in setting up academic industry collaborations, and what does industry want that universities can't do, and what do the universities want that industry can't do? So.
Well, that's really easy for me to start. I'm glad I'm the first person, because I suspect it would be answered in a similar way. The biggest frustration for commercial organisations is time to money. The biggest frustration for academic organisations is time to think. And what was the third component?
What do universities want that industry can't do?
Yeah. Well, it does depend, but it's as little hassle as possible, and as much time to eat locusts and honey and be in the desert, do their shit as they possibly can. So it's that's a real tension, and if the relationship is handled properly, it's a very positive and healthy tension. Yeah. If the relationship isn't handled properly, it can be a very, very disruptive tension.
John?
Yeah, I don't think I could have said it better, except that these folks actually do work extraordinarily hard. I think coming from my last job was a startup, right, and it was 3 years of 70-hour weeks, and I began to realize that maybe things hadn't changed so much when I did the normal send the message at 1 in the morning. And in fact, it was just like the startup. I got the reply at 1:30. So the level of energy in these environments is extraordinarily high. But I think you're right. The room to think and the ratio between time when you do an actual work and time that you spend raising the funds or reporting on the funds to do the actual work is an extreme point of sensitivity.
I also want to commend you on your description. It's very, very accurate. I actually have spent my career in industry, so this is the first time I'm actually working within an academic organization. And besides the things that you said, the thing that I wanted to add that I'm finding with the academic researchers is that when you start to fold in other types of partners as you move from being grant funded, so technology companies, insurers, as you said, they're driven by time to market, getting solutions out there. Academia likes to study areas of interest to them. And so part of it is, even though at a broad level some of the areas may be common, there may be synergies, some of the researchers may feel that they need to give up some areas that they would pursue in order for these partnerships to work, and that is one of the tension areas.
And I didn't want to suggest that eating locusts and honey was like not hard work. I mean, I know these guys are working hard and suffering, and I appreciate that. I really do.
Yes, some people will describe a university as a bunch of entrepreneurs joined by a common parking lot. So there is certainly a feeling that there's nobody in control or in charge of researchers sometimes. So it can be very frustrating. Several of you mentioned the amount of time that universities and research institutes are going to be around. And I know specifically in clean energy, a lot of thought is going into using them as test beds. Basically, if you're Harvard or MIT or UMass, you're going to be sitting where you are for a long time. You can have the resources to invest in clean energy installations if the payback is going to be a long time, because you know you're going to be there and paying the bills. But I wonder if any of you have thought about how universities and local hospitals might be used as facilities for test beds in IT. Gary.
But oddly, certainly in the UK health centre, hospitals are a big target around environmental, and well, it's actually not about environmental sustainability, it's about saving money.
Yeah.
Along with a lot of, again, it's because our hospitals are public sector hospitals, but there is a major government programme around doing a massive retrofitting of environmentally friendly technologies, with, you know, down to something as prosaic as changing the light bulbs. And we're lucky in that all of those hospitals are essentially owned by the government, although theoretically it's devolved. And also, we're also lucky because most of them are very old and decrepit buildings in great need of update and upgrade. So, you know, that's a kind of a win-win. So, yeah, it's already happening in the UK, but we do benefit from that degree of central control that makes doing these things on a large scale possible.
So I guess we are about a 10 megawatt light bulb, if you want to think about it that way. So there's some maybe three dimensions to what we're living with respect to your question. One is the universities have located the data center in a place that's close enough for fast communication, but has the lowest power rates in the state. So there's kind of a practical part to the equation. The other is it's located in an area with a municipal power company that actually owns a hydro dam, and we're working with that company to do a couple of things. One is to kind of optimize the way that we use energy. They, for example, have less energy to spare in the summer versus the winter and so forth. And also working with them to create a test bed for new energy technologies. They have the largest solar array in the state. They're on the river, so they're able to test new kinds of hydropower devices. We bring grad students and professors to that. And then the facility itself is literally going to be a test bed. Issues around how we make sure the facility doesn't go down while the researchers are playing with the data or the controls are important, but we're finding that we can make the right demarcs, make tremendous amounts of data available, and they help us make better decisions, but also are able to publish on how these things work. So it's actually a really neat mix of both research and practical ideas.
Great. Vera, are you going to be using hospitals as test beds for some of your ideas?
Actually, so as I mentioned when I was presenting the slides, we have 7 or 8 clinical partners right now that we have started with. So we are coming again from being an academic clinical type of relationship, now saying to technology companies, insurers and stuff, come join us and let's solve these problems together. So part of our attraction at the Healthcare Delivery Institute at WPI is that we already have these relationships in place for the last few years, and we're expanding them to cover across the continuum of care. So we've been working with acute hospitals, we've been working with clinics, we've been working with mobile solutions, and so that is a draw to other types of partners. And the way that we worked so far, we've been working and will continue to expand on, is that, for instance, I'll use an example. One of the clinical partners was was churning over some of their systems to use a new medication management system within the facility, and so they wanted to understand what the impact was on the processes that they were following, what were the clinical providers' reaction to using this system, what were the patients' reactions to using this system. And so the WPI researchers going in could help evaluate that from an outside objective viewpoint, in terms of arranging how the research would be done, what the studies were, doing the focus groups, collecting the data, and then providing an analysis and report. And so what comes out of that is that the clinical provider that made the change has a reading on what was the effect of putting that in. The provider of the vendor providing the medication management system has an understanding of how well they are meeting a need and what adjustments they have to make. And then the WPI researchers leave with the fact that they, have done some research, can publish some papers around that, and are contributing to the improvement of the way we're doing healthcare delivery. So I do believe that we will be seeing more of that, and I think that that's a good example of a collaborative relationship.
Great. So we've talked a lot about researchers, but the other thing that universities have in particular is a lot of students. So how are you thinking about involving students in industry projects, and again, what are the benefits and the pitfalls?
I'll go first this time. I've been going last all the time. Actually, WPI, for those who may not be familiar with us, because we are the Western Mass School, what we are known for is our project-based education. So our students, our undergraduate students, have two major projects. They do their sophomore and junior year, and then all the research that we've been doing is all project-based as well. And so when we work on both applied research projects and faculty-led student projects at WPI, it is always a mix of faculty and students, whether they're undergraduates or as you're getting into the research areas, we're getting into graduate students and then involving postdocs. So we always have sort of a multi-level team involved in these projects. And what's good about it is that it allows us to take more projects on, because you're not just relying on the core faculty as researchers. They're getting help by being complemented with other members of the team. Another benefit is that as these students, whatever level, undergrad through graduate students, graduate, they have wonderful hands-on project experience that is an attraction to different companies and other entities that are interested in hiring them. Some of the pitfalls, well, you get into the whole area of how do you protect IP as you start to put some of your academic resources out there working with industry and coming up with ideas is how do you protect that IP and who benefits from that IP, and putting together agreements and stuff so that both sides feel that they're getting something out of it. In some cases, is working with students, depending on what it might be. Say a company might want to continue for a longer period of time, but we can't provide the students or the researchers for as long as they would like. So that's still a struggle. But I do think the benefits outweigh the pitfalls.
Let me just add a couple of things. One is to reinforce the point that when you're doing a research project, it's always a continuum of faculty, grad students, and often undergraduates, which contributes both from an education point of view as well as the students get most of the work done. There's a whole other panel, I think, that we could have around industry or commercial and university collaboration around education, right? And the balance between education for skills, education for general knowledge so that you survive in the workplace for decades. Where I think we're seeing both at the community college as well as the non-research university level as well as the research university level, maybe a convergence of interest or stronger perception of convergence of interests. I'll stop there.
I'll be honest, our experience has been extremely mixed when it comes to using undergraduates. And we have learned a lot of lessons, and we're getting much, much better at it. We've taken the decision to pay them notwithstanding the fact that all the newspapers are telling us that, we can have these interns for free, we make it very competitive because, frankly, I don't want cannon fodder. I want the best students in each year. We would rarely fill a project with students from a single university. We mix universities. We train both parties separately. The IP issue is a huge one, and I do a kind of beat-down session with the students before they even start their induction, where I basically put the fear of God into them when it comes to Facebooking the formula and all of that bullshit, which really has happened. And also we spend some time training the hosting organisation, because they have to be very clear that they will need to invest some effort in induction, in support. The way we pitch it is these people aren't just there to sweep your floors and bring you coffee, although I think that's a perfectly reasonable task to give an undergraduate, by the way. But they have to get some value out. So we're very clear. And the other thing is, finally, and it's been alluded to, both parties need a clear timetable and a clear set of desired outcomes, so we can measure what success looks like at the end of it. That's very important academically, because there needs to be something to be marked, to be graded, but it's also important for the organisation, because hopefully, if it goes well, they can justify the effort we've made them put in, and that they'll do it again.
So I think those are great lessons. But Gary, I wonder, when you're looking at students, are you doing individual student interns, or are you doing team internships, so they're coming in and working as a group?
I wouldn't dream of hiring individuals. Actually, as an organisation, we will take individuals for a very specific project, but we wouldn't dream about it as part of our Connected World programme. It would always be for a project of a certain scale. Yeah.
I think it's really interesting that there seems to be very few people who think about taking interns on as groups, and when you see them work together, they help each other. It's actually less work having a group of interns than having an individual intern.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
Just going back maybe a few years, certainly in my commercial experience, hiring students has been critically important and helpful. And I think the most important ingredient if you are going to take students on as individuals is you build in a failure rate. Some are going to work, some aren't. If you're not willing to think that way, then don't do it.
Do we have any questions?
So if you don't have a relationship with a university, and let's say we're a provider organization, but you have ideas about how you might create a mutually beneficial relationship by partnering with the university on research and or helping students with some experience, real-world practical experience, where do you start?
Call me up.
Yeah. What you do is you phone them, and then you get some asbestos gloves, and you stand 7 feet away from your phone because it's going to explode.
Really?
Yeah. It's that simple. But being less trite, what you need to do beforehand is figure out exactly what you want to achieve, what your timescale is. Think about what you might offer the students, and I'm not just talking about cash or Facebook time, but how is it going to improve their academic experience? But then make the call, and yes, seriously, step away from the phone because it's going to explode. Yeah.
Because I'm finding two things. So, part of what we're doing in planning how we're going to work with partners is exploring the market for us and what other institutions are doing. But we're looking at doing a blend, so we're trying to define some maybe standard partnership models that we can use as a basis to let people know what we're doing. But then it's also inviting the conversation of these other partners coming in and talking to us and see what makes sense on both sides and if there's something that we can work out. So I definitely say pick up the phone.
Yeah, maybe I could echo both of these remarks in two ways. One is there's like anywhere else, right? There's a spectrum of people in this community. Some are quite entrepreneurial, quite outreaching. Others, because of either who they are or what they're working on, aren't such a good match. And I think an important part of that mix, therefore, from your side, is to be patient, right? It's not going to necessarily, you aren't going to necessarily make the the exact match on the first try.
To give you a very quick example, and it could very well be different in the UK versus the US, but I have one university that is willing to pay us money to take interns. I don't think they offer that to everyone, but that they're willing essentially to co-fund the interns. I hesitate to call it salary. The smaller the pittance that they get at the end of each
Minimal
month.
wage.
Well, our university does, when we work with corporations, is they are paying for our interns.
And, well, it's not the schools here, but if you are in Massachusetts, the Life Sciences Center does have an intern pool, so you can put your internship opportunities up there, and you can also go through the resumes that they've got. If you're a small company, they'll actually subsidize the internship in the summer. If you're a large company, you are expected to pick up the minimal wage that they get during the summer. So if you're in Massachusetts, there's certainly a resource, a state resource that you can use for that. So one just final question. You open for business? How do we find out about it? And how do they contact you, and what can you offer at the moment? So John, why don't we start with you?
That's a tough one for me because I work for 5 different universities, and they all have a different way of embracing this kind of collaboration. But I would expect that, as Gary said, if you make the call and you're a little bit persistent, you'll pretty quickly get to someone whose job it is to make these kinds of matches. I think just looking at MIT, there's probably 4 different organizations that inside the university that work on these kinds of matchmaking things.
Vera?
I would say call us. So we have a website up that just went up live about a month ago. It's www.wpi.edu. If you just do a + HDI for the Healthcare Delivery Institute, it'll cut through everything on the academic website and bring you to us. We have all our contact information. It'll give you an overview of some of the core faculty that's steering the Institute, as well as some highlights of some of the research we've done, and of course phone calls and emails. So the best thing right now is to just call us direct.
And Gary, how do we find out about your programs?
Sadly, our Connected World program, I think, is now full through 2016. Alas, we're thinking about scaling it up because we don't want it to be full through 2016, but I'm delighted it is. If, for whatever reason, you're looking for really bright undergrads from the UK, or if if you're a multinational, then I'd be very happy to point you in the right direction. All of the big universities have fully funded departments who would be delighted to take your call. That's for sure.
Okay, well, I'd like to thank the panel very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.